Hello, welcome everybody. Oh man, let's count myself back in. 3, 2.
Okay.
No, just kidding. Welcome everybody to Radpod and Chill. I'm Heidi.
Hold on. Okay, we'll cut out the first ending in post.
Oh my God. Before we went live, hey, whoever's echoing, just mute me, please. Mute up. Before we went live, I joked to the guys, I'm make me laugh. I just didn't expect it to happen that quickly. Welcome everybody to Radpod and Chill. I'm Heidi Kuda. High Fidelity and Jim Stewartson are here. We are going to be showing you guys some highlights from our interview with a very important contact in the country of Georgia who is very busy as a frontline exec on the war on disinformation and Russian active measures. And her organization is, of course, among the targets of this Russian law. And we will let her tell you guys that story. But where I wanted to start was on something that our previous guest, Paul Nyland, calls the collective attack on reality. I think that's a very important framework for what the West has been enduring. But I also want to mention that when I was listening to your space last night, Jim, with the Gal Squad, and Gal was talking about empathy, I realized that so many people and groups that are on the receiving end of this collective attack on reality are those actually with the empathy to try to do better, to try to make the world better, to try to educate people in a more meaningful way. And there's something very sinister about the fact that the people who are continually under attack are those who actually have retained their empathy and dignity in this time of grave deception.
Empathy is the enemy of nihilism, right? And the sort of core underlying movement here is nihilistic. It's not right wing. It's not left wing. We've got people coming at us from all around the horseshoe, right? The core underlying value is just nihilism. And along with nihilism, you need to be effectively empathy free, right? You can't want to cause the destruction of society and of people around you, knowing the suffering that's going to be caused. If you haven't either been born without empathy or been stripped of it. And it's the stripping away of people's empathy, which to me is just the underlying problem that we have. Our adversaries and criminals have figured out how to weaponize the internet, social media, in order to strip the empathy from people. We all know people who used to be loving, warm human beings, and now there's some, who the fuck is this, who's calling me all these names and acting like I'm their enemy or a pedo or whatever the fuck, right? We all know people like that. And the reason they act that way is that their empathy, at least for anybody in the out group, has been eliminated. And so, we've just got this nihilist strain that unfortunately, comes around every now and again. Comes along with fascism. People forget why we have a democracy, why it fucking matters. why we're all theoretically doing this. It's because empathy and democracy go hand in hand in theory. Human beings who care about each other vote in people who care about them. And we've completely short-circuited that whole thing. Not only short-circuited it, but mirrored it and weaponized it so that democracy is being used as a cudgel to brainwash people into wanting to destroy it.
In the kindest words I could find, to explain that a lot of the headlines that are being served up to people are designed to outrage farm. It designed to strip them of their empathy, go down a rabbit hole that weaponizes, let's say in California, weaponizes the unhoused issue, make it look like the unhoused are grifting and getting all kinds of free things, whatever. Keep in mind that those who are going down these rabbit holes, they already know everything about people because our data has been weaponized, our privacy has been stripped. And what I'm finding is that there are very decent people who I know to be decent people who are being completely stripped of their empathy because they click on those headlines, and then they are rage farmed, and then suddenly the in and the out group becomes pretty apparent. And God forbid you end up in the blast zone by trying to point out that we have been a target nation of active measures, hybrid warfare for a decade, because then you might just be called a conspiracy theorist, which I find super cheap and super offensive. And, but you're muted, Jim. The last thing
I'm a fucking idiot. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say the last thing I'll say is, and this is something that I just addressed in a post today, the Russia, we've said this many times, thanks to Keir Giles, who actually said it on our show, was effective propaganda. But guess what? It's not a fucking hoax.
Right. And it's not a conspiracy theory. And the fact is that, people being called mentally ill, being called conspiracy theorists, being called all sorts of names, if they have the temerity to talk about Russian interference, is an active measure, right? Now, it doesn't mean that these are people who are, sitting in St. Petersburg, typing Russian to English translation, right? These operations are much more sophisticated, but the blame Hillary, it's not the Russians. Remember, again, I've talked about this before. That was on both sides, right? You had the dirtbag leftists who fucking hated Hillary and called you, mentally ill if you talked about Russian interference. And then you had on the alt-right, you had people who hated Hillary and called you mentally ill if you talked about Russian interference. It's the same, thing that we're seeing now. These active measures work around the horseshoe, and they need to by definition. If you just radicalize one side, you're not going to get very much of a fight. And so, we're seeing a whole bunch of intentional radicalization and polarization and dehumanizations on both sides. And that polarization, the pulling apart, is exactly the point. That's exactly what the nihilists want, because they don't think left and right matters anymore. They just want it to all go away so they can start over.
So I'm not terribly smart, so I'm going to say it in an easier way. Every question which has a binary to it, you're either A or you're B, right? That becomes a wedging question. And what those wedging questions, those wedging situations, those wedging issues are useful for is breaking communities apart, right? If you think about the people we're going up against, they are smart people, they are technical people, and they have realized that the way to break a problem, the United States, democracy, these are problems for fascist mobsters who want to take over the world, right? So, how do you solve a massive problem? Same way you eat an elephant, one bite at a time. So it doesn't matter if it's Palestine and Israel. It could be Samuel Alito flew his flag upside down. Who cares, right? I mean, it could be any issue that enrages people, because enragement is engagement. That's what social media was built for. If you don't have to be on social media, get the fuck off of social media, because that's where the wedges come from. The news, you see wedges in the news all the freaking time. Just look out for the wedges. It's not that hard.
Can I let me bring up the foundational wedge of all of this. There is a wedge that evenly divides the world population right in half, which is men and women. Misogyny is the easiest way to divide a population. Excuse me. I have to call.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Jim.
So a lot of what we've been seeing, a lot of these operations and division operations started with misogynist movements, Gamergate, the incel movement, the alt-right, and this sort of macho man, Roman
men's rights,
figure. Misogyny was the sort of originating hate wedge issue. I mean, it has been for all of eternity, but 10 years ago when Gamergate started and that whole movement bloomed out, they learned how to use that basic part of being human and turned it into a weapon of destruction. And I just want to bring up one sort of last point. The innovation of Gamergate is not that they were able to create a sort of cult, which is what it was, but they didn't really have a cult leader, different from Jonestown or any of these other sort of classical cults, as it were. It was an anti-cult. It was a cult that pointed out, that hated someone just for who they were,
right,
and then warmed themselves around the fire of this hatred against a stranger that had done absolutely nothing to them. And it was this sort of innovation of being able to pull people into a group like that, to kind of indoctrinate them to believe that somehow sadism is a legitimate form of expression. That was what then set off Pizzagate. They called it Pizzagate for a reason, because it was just Gamergate for Hillary Clinton. It was literally the same people who started Gamergate went on to do Pizzagate. So I think the idea of a wedge issue is an important one, hi-fi, and I just wanted to point out that it always starts with misogyny, and we need to stop, and we're letting them institutionalize it again.
Yeah, right.
We've got just last thing about, so Alito put a Stop the Steal upside down flag, and then what do you do when you got confronted? He blamed it on his fucking wife. I mean, what kind of piece of shit does that? Well, a guy who's going to take away women's rights.
Well, also a guy with 200 lawyers who's coming up with his best, retort. Blame it on the wife, who blames it on some liberal neighbors. I mean, really, it's like, oh,
The
it's a
liberal
response.
neighbors.
Yeah.
The
So
liberals did it. They
yeah,
made us do
yeah,
it. The
yeah,
liberals
yeah,
made us do it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um,
Hold on. That's an important point, though.
yeah,
That is a very important point, because numerous times in the court of law, generally in Washington, D.C., where January 6th defendants are being tried,
yeah,
sentenced, a lot of these people are saying they were caught up in the moment, that, Trump swayed me, right? I was swept up in the tide. Say, man, if something takes over your cognitive ability so much that you're out there committing crimes,
hmm
maybe it's not a good thing for you to be fucking doing. Just a thought.
Oh, where I thought
Maybe
you
we're in
were.
a cult. Could we? I
Where,
mean,
where,
look, these people in depositions said that they were digital soldiers, that Q
yeah,
sent them, that
yeah,
fucking, I mean, you can just look at the testimony. I mean, it's
yeah,
clear why they were there and what they thought they were doing. Ashley Babbitt legitimately in her brain thought she was saving the fucking children. It doesn't excuse her, and her death was absolutely justified. However, she literally believed that she was going to rescue kids, that she was going to prevent the deep state from murdering more children.
yeah,
And it's really important, that the people who have not been affected in that way understand that these people are literally living in that reality.
yeah.
And you just need to understand how to deal with somebody who's living in a parallel universe than you, because it's really fucking traumatizing and weird and terrifying if you don't understand it, and even if you do, but at least you have some reference.
So I know I have a lot of new subscribers to my Substack who've been sent from various other Substacks. And I think it's really important that we give them a kind of, can you do like a one line? Because so much of what we talk about, we assume people are already have been watching us for a while and get it. But I think that a lot is hidden behind words like Gamergate or Pizzagate, and that these words are like gerrymandering and just they're words where people just don't, okay, it's like they don't know exactly what it is. And so, is there a way for you to give like a 1 or 2 line summary on what those types of operations are so people have a better grasp on them and the fact that they are still happening now?
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Half-Life.
Gamergate and Pizzagate. These are internet organized operations designed to generate a hateful cult that is willing to act in real life and terrorize people.
Jim,
Yeah,
thanks, high five.
that's pretty good. I mean, Gamergate was born it was actually born on the largest incel website in the world that was not actually born on 4chan. And then it moved to 4chan. And 4chan, Gamergate didn't sort of invent trolling and the kind of noxious shit that was going on there. What it did was figure out how to organize it and weaponize it and target it. Right? There were people trolling and doing raids on shit on people for a long time.
Raid culture is what it's.
But the sustained and constant and deliberate tearing down of a human being's psychology, to ruin their life for glee, to enjoy every act of pain that the person experiences, that was new as far as I know. That to literally just have a digital group of terrorists who are trying to, decimate a stranger simply because everybody else is doing it, right? So if you can do it against a stranger just because everybody else is doing it, well, shit. If you can add politics and add, a bunch of bullshit created by Russian hacked emails or whatever, and point it at the most qualified person to ever run for president, you might be able to steal an election. And that was the point. Now, start that way on purpose, that's a different conversation. But what it transformed to, and remember, these are all the same people. Steve Bannon is the guy who popularized it. Mike Flynn and Eric Prince and Roger Stone, it's all the same fucking people doing the same thing.
Why? Thank you so much, both of you, for that. I think it's incredibly helpful when we just sort of give people a refresher every now and then, and for the new people to understand why we talk about this stuff. But for me, the most alarming thing was when we had Brianna Wu on our show on RadPod, and she explained how she was the target of this hate cult, and it was really horrific. But then what was even more horrific than the fact that she was targeted with all of this hate and all these threats, and they were really gruesome stuff. But then she has to wake up one day and find that the people behind this hate cult all got jobs in Trump's White House. So if that's not enough to tip us off to, like, the connections between, him and the weaponization of internet hate cults, then I don't know what is. Can you imagine how she must have felt waking up one day and Steve Bannon's there and all these people who participated in the weaponization of this hate suddenly has jobs in the White House? Muted, Boomer.
That's the second Boomer moment.
I was waiting for a hi-fi and mumbling to myself.
I'll once again, I'm willing to take the blame because
that's my fabulous job. Lovely. So Jim, that was a shocker. Brianna, White House, Bannon, everybody getting jobs in the White House.
Yeah, I mean, look, the entire crew of white nationalists, alt-right trolls, ended up
so gnarly
with careers, until 4 years later when some of them got arrested for, invading the fucking Capitol, right?
Yeah.
But it's literally the same people, Mike Cernovich, and still out there doing the same shit that he was one of the biggest cheerleaders in Gamergate, Milo, and all these guys. They were all Breitbart puppies, and they saw this amazing phenomenon on 8chan and decided that hey, let's turn this into a full-fledged internet phenomenon. And it created the alt-right, and it created the sort of dirtbag Bernie bro left.
Yeah.
That's just how that happened.
So two things. Hi-Fi, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, chat is specifically shout out to Jen for bringing this up, because here's the thing, man, is, I'm a computer guy. Heidi's a journalist. Jim's a game designer and like AI button clicker coder type. And we got this shit pretty well figured out. And if we can figure it out, and, Jim's threads, a week before January 6th, we sent information to the FBI. And yet the FBI says, no one could have seen it coming. And now we've mapped these networks. We've figured out the billionaires. We figure out what they're using social media for, how they weaponize social media, state actor level weaponizing social media, down to private companies weaponizing social media, like Sergey Grishin's 421 Media or Yonder/New Knowledge, which are companies you should look into if you're new here. But if we three and Gal Squad, absolutely, if we can track all this crap down, why the hell is our intelligence community so, and again, it comes down to this question, are they completely incompetent or are they complicit? That's the question.
A combination.
Combination.
It's always
even the answer is not binary, right?
Unfortunately, it isn't. Look, there are 100% elements in the Biden administration that are opposed to anything that looks like retribution or anything like that against Trump. And, you know, for a long time, I kind of, okay, Garland's being cautious, whatever. But, you know, 6 months now before the next election, I am certainly in the camp that there's complicity there. Certainly in law enforcement. The problem with the intelligence community, hi-fi, is they can't operate inside our borders, primarily.
So,
well, the FBI can.
Yes, our law enforcement, domestic law enforcement can, and they do have a counterintelligence division, which was headed up by a Russian fucking spy during the 2016 election.
So,
right? So the entire
Charles McGonigal,
the entire capability, I'll land here, Heidi, the entire counterintelligence, domestic counterintelligence capability was being run by a Russian fucking spy. And so now we've got Chris Wray in there, who, as we've talked about here before, talks about Chinese biolabs without any fucking evidence, and goes on Fox News and just hunts down Chinese spies instead of doing a goddamn thing about any of this. So between their complete lack of ability to prepare or do anything about January 6th, their complete not only inability to investigate January 6th, but to prevent the DOJ from doing it, leads me to believe that we have a legitimate, actual problem with corruption inside of our DOJ and FBI. To where on the mice scale is it? You know, is it money? Is it ideology? Is it just people being fucking, you know, lame? It's a combination of all these things. Basically, what's happened over time is this insurgency has just thrown sand in the fucking gears, kept throwing sand in there, until it's now basically at the point of being totally seized up. Let's be real. The FBI and the DOJ have done nothing to stop this.
So I was explaining to somebody who was saying, but what about all the people who've gone to prison over January 6th? And I said, I would give up almost all of them, except high-level Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, put them into some sort of diversionary program that helps them, come back from all of the digital poison that they've been fed for a couple of high-level arrests. I think that would be fine. And I think what I understand is there are factions within our agencies, and that there are many people doing the hard work required of their jobs. And within those entities and agencies, there are people who've been captured. And we know that because we're always listening to various indictments and, arrests and news reports of those who've been radicalized within our enforcement agencies. So we understand that's a real issue. How much of the agencies have been captured, we don't know. But I've been saying this for so long, and I stopped saying it because we're too close to the election. But I really believed last year would be the year we would find out if we were still a rule of law country. And we found out there were a lot of indictments and trials set and all of that. But I think we are seeing that the ability to delay and to sort of defang a lot of our justice is apparent.
You bring up some things I need to discuss. Number one, Mr. Mitt Romney running his rich mouth about if he were president, he would immediately pardon Donald Trump. Okay, we tried that with Nixon, and we still have Roger Stone stinking up the place. No, it's time for accountability, my friends. I'm sorry.
I'm
Not
sorry.
after Brooks' brother.
That millionaire, mediocre white
okay,
motherfucker. Fuck him.
All right, so we need to learn to deal with treason because there was an attempted coup in this country.
Yeah.
Now, we know from history, specifically the business plot and General Smedley Butler, there were a bunch of rich sons of bitches who were trying to overthrow a government using veterans. Huh. Okay. Interesting. And now Mr. Michael Flynn is out there having his tour, congregating at the Hollow 2A Pew Pew range. And he's traveling around the country talking to veterans. Where? In churches. But we promise he's not creating a theocratic insurgency under the very noses of our law enforcement while they sit around.
I mean, the dude is traveling with insurrectionists, like 6 at least, plus Q people have literal Q drops of them are on his bus. It's really, really clear what is going on here at this point. And today I posted a short clip of a 20-minute rant by Ivan Raiklin, who is one of the most dangerous people on earth, and I have seen and believe that there's a high likelihood that the guy's a pipe bomber. Doesn't matter if he was or not, because he was organizing hundreds, thousands of people to go to January 6th. He was telling them to bring medical bags and water and camping gear and shit because there was going to be a siege. He was doing that weeks before January 6th. And he did a 20-minute rant about how when Trump is elected and Mike Flynn is choosing personnel, and that's important, that's Mike Flynn's idea, he's going to be the Secretary of Retribution, and he has a list called a Deep State Target List of 350 people who are Mike Flynn's enemies, people who were in the deep state and had the temerity to talk about him, people in the press who had the temerity to write about him. And this motherfucker, Ivan Raiklin, is out here saying what's going to happen is we're going to have live stream swatting of everybody. Swatting is the word, of all of these people on this target list. They will be rounded up and they will then be given the maximum penalty for treason, which is what? Death. Flynn is out here calling for the death penalty for Democrat pedos. It's a fucking death cult. It is nothing short of it. They will do it. This is not bluster. I don't know how many times we have to see what they do before we fucking believe them when they tell us this. It's very, and it's very disturbing to me to see people obfuscating that particular scenario, because Ivan Raiklin is one of the most dangerous people in the country, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it was interesting listening to your spaces last night and listen to somebody say, no, they're not saying that they're going to do that. They're saying they're going to follow the letter of the law. And it's like, no, the letter of the law was not followed on January 6th. Like, what are you talking about?
It's because he says stuff like, we're going to use all legal, ethical, moral, means to execute you.
That's a
right?
Roger Stone line.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing, right? Is there is no legal, ethical situation in which you execute your political enemies, right? What they will do is they will twist words, they will set out articles, they will spread it on social media that these people are traitors and they were, who knows, probably working with China or working with Israel or whatever nonsense they can come up with.
No. There's a very specific, I want to be clear about this. There's a specific list of people, and this specific list of people are the people who went after Donald Trump, went after Mike Flynn. The people in the deep state are the sort of primary targets of this list. It's not just sort of random people. And I think that's important, because this is literally retribution. It's literally these people who want to get the power to murder their opponents.
So if a high school kid has a list of other students he wants to kill, generally that's a cause for concern, right?
It really is.
Here we have radicalized theocratic fascists who talk about bringing our country under one God and one religion, out there toting guns and giving guns away and selling houses with guns and preaching in churches and riling up the troops, right? And using their dissociative pedogate, whatever the fuck propaganda, breaking people's minds. And what are we doing about that?
Anything? Yeah. There's all women being called witches and Democrats being dismissed as pedos, and
I've seen some book burnings.
Very effective propaganda. And again, I wish we had better words to explain what we're talking about. But Paul Nyland, again, our guest a couple episodes ago, referred to how Russia has become a death cult because of propaganda. And what you're describing right now is a death cult because of propaganda. And what I'd like to do now, Hi-Fi, if you have some clips from our guest from Georgia. We had Tamar Kintzorishvili with us. She is the editor-in-chief of Myth Detector in Georgia, where she not only teaches kids and teachers media literacy, how to spot fakes, how to be aware of propaganda, what to look for. She was attacked for her work. And why don't we show that clip first? Because I think people need to understand, if we don't defeat what we are talking about, which is this encroaching authoritarianism, these will be the next things that we see happening in America.
Yeah, this is the next step. So yeah, that's coming next. Signs up in your neighborhoods, you know, targeting, trolling in real life, right? It's left the internet. Now it's on your doorstep. What do you do?
And to be clear, those posters were denigrating her. They were complete and total lies. They were designed to, basically make her and her organization look untrustworthy. And as she explained to us, this Russian law that just passed, the idea of it is to make groups like hers have to register as foreign agents. So therefore, people of Georgia don't trust them, and it undermines trust. And what did we learn from our friend who worked on 2 Navalny campaigns, that part of Putin's mission is to destroy all of our trust with each other. Trust is the key thing that keeps us united. And without that trust, we are very easily divided and weakened terribly and much easier to overthrow. So, she's fighting for the integrity of trust.
Yeah, I mean, trust is the thing that has been attacked here. I listen to guys like Flynn all the time, and they tally up the sort of success card of the institutions that their team no longer trusts, right? CIA is a pit, and I'm going to eliminate the Department of Education because it's just Marxist swill, right? They want no one to trust anything that's come before, because all of it has to be able to be eliminated in people's minds, right? You've got to convince them that these things are evil, that they're dirty, that they're destructive, they're full of commies or whatever, and that's what we're being put through right now. Is America is a pit, and the military is broken, and law enforcement wants to revolt, and eventually those messages all add up.
Yeah, exactly. And we say this over and over again, there's no rear areas in information war, and there's nobody who's immune to it. So people who are very smart can be tricked by all this stuff. And let's go to our second clip.
Actually, I gotta bring up something that's actually good news that I want to tell people, because there is a way to stop this, and the EU just took a step that direction. They shut down 4 Russian media outlets. You're out. So that's a good sign. Like,
Yeah,
maybe we could learn to do that here.
that's a really good sign. And one thing that I learned from our Georgian friend Tamar is that where Russia really benefits and where they get the most bang for their buck is when they have people like Tucker Carlson and Alex Jones and Marjorie Taylor Greene doing the pro-Kremlin propaganda for them. She basically said that's invaluable to the Kremlin because having Americans do their work for them is more useful than Russian-speaking propagandists. We might hear that clip from her as well.
Well, go ahead, Haifa, if you want to play the clip.
All right.
Because we have state capture. This government is run by Russian oligarch Ivanishvilli, and most ministers are appointed from his private bank, and they are accountable to Ivanishvili rather than to the public. That's why the current problem in Georgia and with this government is that they see the democracy as a threat for themselves. And they are fighting with democratic institutions like civil society organizations, media outlets, all independent platforms that are not controlled by Ivanishvili. That's why ahead of final decision of EU, Georgian Dream announced special relationship with China, because they know public opinion is against Russia. And instead of direct shift of foreign policy, they decided to prepare ground for soft shift and to start reference to the Silk Road, traditional connections with China. That's why this is a U-turning moment for Georgia. Either we are preserving what we achieved so far, or we're going back to the authoritarian country where everything is run by Russian oligarch.
Where everything is run by Russian oligarchs, which reminds me of something that happened today, because I really think this is important for people to know too. Apparently, in Germany, a member of the far right was raided over bribery. Wow. It's amazing what happens when your law enforcement isn't completely ideologically and, compromised.
I mean, Menendez, they got the Democrat for bribery.
Oh, they got that guy in Texas, Aguilera, or I forget.
So, I mean,
and that's the thing. If you got corrupt Democrats, take them too. I'm good with that. I don't care.
Yeah, because it's like they need more of those to balance things out, right? So they go at everybody they can over there. In the meantime, there's a massive transnational crime syndicate currently attempting to overthrow the country. But
I just did a report on my Spies versus Lobbyists report, ran last week in Byline, and it showed the rash of Russian spies being arrested all across Europe, and again in America we have people like Tucker Carlson and Alex Jones delivering pro-Kremlin propaganda and platforming genocidal Nazis, and no one seems to be bothered by this, and I personally am.
Even the thing in Europe, honestly, I mean, those are Russian outlets, right? You shut down Russian outlets. Like, we shut down RT here after they invaded Ukraine, right? You can't even, it's a little bit harder to, you can go to the website and it's fine, but on Telegram and stuff, you can't see it. It's not, but that's not, as you said, Heidi, that's not the problem. Yeah. It's not Igor in St. Petersburg at all. It's the people here. It's the people who don't even know. Most of them, they just have an instantaneous reaction that if you have a Ukraine flag in bio, you're obviously some sort of mentally ill libtard, right? That is the problem. Is we've got a huge installed base of people who have no idea that they've been completely fucking turned backwards.
Yeah, I put together a dozen reports that I've written in the last couple of years today to help defend minds from the collective attack on reality. And I wrote, Russia was excellent propaganda, but sadly, Russian interference in the West is ongoing. We've been under sustained attack from hybrid warfare in the US for a decade, and we are perilously close to losing not only our democracy, but our minds. And maybe I should have written, we are perilously close to losing our minds and our democracy. But bottom line is that, like, I have really believed if we could just hold the line on those we hadn't lost, that we could have a positive outcome in November. But every day in my own sphere, which is getting smaller and smaller, I am seeing more and more people captured by the extremist clickbait narratives designed to radicalize them, or captured by the I'm going to vote for RFK side of this whole horseshoe that we talk about. And going to go down swinging, but I'm, I want to say I'm optimistic. I can't. I'm hopeful always, but
I'm optimistic because otherwise, there's no fucking point. I am not here to lose. I keep saying that. Like, this is a solvable problem. Unfortunately, it appears that some very bad shit has to happen before people are going to figure it out. My goal is to get to lessen the damage, to get as many people informed as possible ahead of time, to lessen the impact of, all the different active measures that are going to come down on us, because Jesus Christ, they're going to be very, very intense. And I am still hopeful that with enough public understanding, if we can get the press to, and starting to move them a little bit, get off their ass and start actually explaining what's going on here. At a minimum, we will be able to raise the awareness of the country so that the shit isn't just like sneak attack Pearl Harbor. Like, what happened? Who could have possibly known? It's going to be the same thing all over again. I have zero intention of allowing it to just sort of get swept under the rug this time.
I need to, again, I'm a simple man, and I'm going to take the 50,000-foot view. It's very simple. The internet has turned into a worldwide battlefield, and the act of war that's being waged is cognitive, thus cognitive warfare. The delivery mechanism is very easy to understand. We all have them. It's the screens, right? The screens pump poison into us, be it television or even talk radio. We know that, the radio waves have been poisoned by this propaganda.
Yeah.
Just turn on some music, turn off the information overload, do what you know is the right thing, which in this case is you're going to vote Joe Biden because, listen, the alternative is fucking fascism and people dying in camps, because that's where we're headed. Ivan Raiklin has already said this to us.
Well, it's also
I'm not saying this. This is him.
It's also in the Project 2025. I'm not worried about the popular vote so much. The majority of the population, lives in big cities. Those big cities, for the most part, tend to vote Democrat, and they're often attached to states that go Democrat. But that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about are the very real threats to our democracy. We've already seen January 6th, and we've already forgotten about it. Most people seem to have already memory holed the coup, as Ruth Ben-Ghiat predicted that they would. I'm more concerned about the Electoral College and the fact that with all of our data being weaponized, listen, Hillary Clinton lost by 70,000 votes. I think Biden won by 45,000. There are plenty of well-funded think tanks figuring out how to game those numbers. And as Jim said, even, more importantly, should Biden win, and I hope that he does, it's going to be what's happening after, when you have the same people who were behind throwing the insurrection in January 6th right now trying to gin up violence.
I mean, they're already, the big lie 2 has already started, right? They are already denying the results of the election. Flynn just says flat out, I don't deny that, I'm not an election denier. I don't deny that we have elections. I just deny that we have fair elections, period. No details other than elections are bad. You can't trust them.
Yeah.
He says, if the elections were fair, Donald Trump would win 50 states, all 50 states, and he says it with a straight face to his people, and they fucking believe it. That's the important part. It's literally for them going to be like, oh my God, he lost Vermont. It's obviously a liberal conspiracy, right? Like, well, Vermont, Bernie, it is going to be an absolute hellstorm of fraud, disinformation, legal, like the lawfare, the gumming up of the entire system is going to be under sort of multi-level attack. And I see no sign whatsoever that we have any fucking idea.
Were we just completely ill prepared for a corrupt foreign asset to be stress testing our Constitution in this way? Because I think a new low for me, and this could be part of my mood. As you know, I stay away from the television, but I don't have a television, but I see what's happening because I read everything and I see the highlight reels. But for a gag order to be circumvented by having a bunch of GOP extremists going to sit behind you and speak for you, that seems like that shouldn't be cool. Like that seems like that shouldn't be cool at all.
He also paid people or people said the stuff he wanted to say, and then he quoted them from a piece of paper. So it wasn't even coming out of somebody else's mouth. It was coming out of his own
That's
mouth.
just rerouting the fucking message.
Of course it is. Of course it is. But all that is the perfect example of what happens when you've got a justice system that's concerned about fucking norms, concerned about optics, when people are just doing the shit in the open.
Yeah.
And that is a problem. The government has lost the sort of, or maybe hopefully not lost it completely, but the instinct to fight fascism.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The thing people forget, we were under fascist rule. We were under theocratic fascist rule by the Church of England, a colonialist imperial tyranny. And that, by the way, that's the word that they're now using about Joe Biden.
Yeah.
They fucking, we hit 40,000 on the Dow, and like unemployment's at 3, and it's fucking like phenomenal all around. But it's tyranny.
It's too much for Eric Prince. He's got to talk about, the 3% overthrew the tyrannical.
Yeah, Eric's doing his whole thing. Yeah, he's basically calling for a second revolution.
Is he still in Dubai?
No, I think he's here.
Oh, he shifted to the States, has he?
Well, I don't know. He travels all over the place because he's an international terrorist.
So
true.
So I am gonna read you guys Paul Nyland's cover. He's a reporter based in Kiev, and I think it also informs our last one or two clips. He wrote, "I saw some brilliant, brave, and very ordinary people, young and old, do an extraordinary thing. They defeated a cruel and corrupt dictator." That's what is on his, Twitter bio. And he was talking about what happened in Ukraine a decade ago. I believe we're seeing some very brilliant and brave and ordinary people in Georgia, young and old, doing an extraordinary thing. They are attempting to defeat this Russian law again because they know what it means. And I hope that Americans can save themselves the trouble of having to have eloquent things like that written about them by just showing up, understanding what's at stake. And as Jim always says, not only voting and getting everybody else you vote, but to understand that, we are being, we have mind hacks going on. This is a mind war, and we have tools against them. We just got to understand it and deploy them. Hi-Fi, do you have any more clips?
I have more clips, but I need to say something real fast. I've been, you watch what's happening in these Eastern European countries. Like, let's take Ukraine, right? Paul Manafort was in Ukraine, And in Ukraine, they used a bunch of corrupt billionaire money. They took over a bunch of media. They had a bunch of trolls, and they installed an authoritarian, fascist leader through democratic elections. They did that in Ukraine. They did that in Georgia. In Belarus, they stole the election, right? The woman who actually won the election had to flee the country because of the corrupt military and police, right? We've seen attempts with the AfD in Germany. They're still working on it. Le Pen, Italy, Maloney. We see, okay, a fascist gets into power through democracy, and then that country dissolves and turns into an oligarchy, a kleptocracy. These mobsters steal the tax dollars and leave the average person high and dry. And we know who's doing it, right? We see Elon Musk trying to push this bullshit. We see, of course.
Oh, hi. Thanks for checking in. I'm still a piece of garbage.
I was waiting. It took way too fucking long, dude. I was like, when is it coming? You're killing me, bro.
Can I?
Like next time you pull that, you have to get to the punchline.
So I do want to make a point.
I was making a point while making a point.
Yes,
I
got
understand.
I have a lot of points.
Amazing.
I saw what you're doing, and it was
amazing. I just want to say about Georgia, the Georgian people, yes, that was their first free and fair election. And what happened was, and not unlike what happened in Ukraine, she said it was basically a Potemkin election. There were promises that were made and told to the West, and different promises that were made and told to Russia. And that is what the people had to figure out the hard way. So what we do when we do this work in America is try to explain to people that just because somebody like Trump is hugging the flag and holding a Bible does not mean that he's actually not a foreign asset, does not mean that he does not want to turn this country into a fascist dictatorship. So hopefully there's enough people not fooled that the hope that Jim and I were just talking about is not denied. Who's got the barking dog?
It's not me, but you know what I do have is I have another clip.
It's difficult sometimes to detect the Russian footprint when they are using even Tucker Carlson's videos. They have the YouTube channel, Tucker Carlson in Russian, because it's more convincing when you have English speaker to deliver with the same messages rather than to listen to Russia Today or Sputnik. So this is deflection. This deflective source model works quite well. And that's why we try through media literacy to educate young people how to identify harmful content, how to track transparency of sources. In certain cases, fake CNN or fake BBC, they are registered in St. Petersburg, and everybody knows that no one go to Russia to register IP address there.
She's so great.
She has a very good point, though. People don't know that these fake news sites or these bad actors on social media, they don't know that they're fake.
Yeah.
Right? They assume that they're real. I mean, we saw that there was one instance where some Russians set up both sides of a protest somewhere. Yeah. I forget where, but they were trying to start a fight, right?
All of them, they do that all the time.
They do that constantly. So provocatia, right? Oh my gosh, look at all these fights on the streets. Chaos must be reigning, and democracies don't work. Yeah. I mean, come on. Why do we keep fucking falling for it time after time after time?
Well, we're trying to narrow that gap the best we can. Is that all we have, or is there anything else? I do want to say that she's said that her organization is not going to register as a foreign agent. They expect to get fined. and they may have to try to move their work outside of Georgia in order to do their work for the Georgian people.
Here's clip number 4.
Russia uses Western achievements better than their own. They're using democracy to undermine democracy and democratic platforms. And they learn how to avoid platform policies because West is more transparent and you should go through procedures. They learn better, they know better how to avoid this transparent policy developed through inclusive process.
What better way to get around that than being part of the process? Yeah. Interesting. Things for everyone to consider.
Just one more thing I want to say about her and how brave she was to even talk to us. When I asked her about the parallels to what happened in Ukraine a decade ago to what's happening in Georgia now, particularly with the people wanting to move toward, the West and wanting to move toward the EU and being denied that, she's not even able to speak on it, and says that if she did speak on it, they would accuse her of being a revolutionary and accuse me of instigating a revolution. And so I bring this up to tell people that we are still able to speak truth to power here. We still have that right. Help us secure that right beyond November.
Yeah, I mean, literally, we might lose it in 8 months. Literally, like he will shut down. They say it. He's got a whole document that talks about it, and he says it out loud. And Bannon and Kash Patel and the rest of them say it out loud. We're not kidding about this. We're going to put you in jail. If you've been going against Trump and lying about patriots, we're coming for you. And if you're Ivan Raiklin, he's going to execute you. Be Kash or Bannon, they're going to put you in prison.
Yeah,
these people tell us.
Keep Radpod out of prison. That's our new slogan.
Yeah. So
anyway, I wonder if they're still mad about me hacking Trump's phone.
Oh, you didn't hack it.
All right.
I know, but God, was that funny?
It was funny. Okay, so what's the final word, Hi-Fi?
Well, one of the biggest wedge issues out there, and it's very simple. The GOP is the party of overturning Roe versus Wade. They're the party of fuck you to women's rights. They're the party of fuck you to human rights. They're the party of fuck you to our entire planet. So I think I'm just going to let women from BBC Two have the word. And thanks to the Instagram user who captured it.
Women have to